This is a return. I'm amazed sometimes in reading especially the work on machine translation, to discover how much of what they think is like the thinking we had in the 19th century. I mean, when you know, the Encyclopedia Britannica would characterize whole cultures. I mean, like they would talk about India, I mean, which of course is many different cultures, because of the language. I mean, the way in which they spoke English, and it's that kind of crude relation between the physiology of language and the cultural potential of a language that is still present, it seems to me, certainly in Shannon's work on this subject. I mean, he was not the worst, by the way. The people who went into cybernetics were even more insistent on the correlation between mechanical patterns and cultural patterns. I'm not sure, does that, is that, you have a quizzical look on your face that troubles me. I mean, it is a difficult question. But the bottom line is that to invest too much in any mechanical aspect of the language as a key to understanding the deeper meanings of what the people who are using the language intend is already a slippery slope.
No, I just have a comment to make, and then I'll ask my question. My graduate school roommate was a Proto-Indo-Europeanist, and the stuff he knew and the things he did, ununderstandable. Today he's working and has made quite a lot of money on machine translation.
Yeah.
That's not my question. But that's just to tell you where the business is going.
Yeah.
But there's one thing you said which I find truly interesting, particularly since I think we're all interested in art and in literature. And it's in the thought that on one hand you have language used as communication, okay, and then language as also being its own matter. In other words, I believe that literature, or what we call literature, is not just telling you a story, but it's essentially drawing your attention on the very means that are telling the story.
Indeed, that's exact, yeah.
And I was wondering if you had more to say about that, since that's where all our minds are.
Well, I mean, one thing that you might say is that philologists are failed novelists. In the sense that what they are both interested in is the relation between language as a structure in itself. I mean, there's a sense in which, I was bad-mouthing mathematics as being inhuman, but there's a sense in which language as a structure is inhuman as well. In order for us to use it, we have to invent whole sciences, I mean, whole batteries of behavior. But all of that is still not to totally humanize the system-like quality of language as such. So that's why I conclude with lying and Kafka and quote Murphy on puns. The idea that we can be either completely free of system on the one hand, or completely free to be systemless existences. That's a crazy dichotomy that is never realized in anything. And language, I think, is an area where in different sciences, you need to have a different push in one direction or the other. And I think in philology, the push has to be on always reminding everyone of the otherness of language. The fact that what we do is not natural. Language is not natural. And we forget that. If I had to invent a motto for philology, it would be, remember that you're in language. Language is not in you. And it's that peculiar balance between the two, I think, that and getting back to that man Bakhtin, that I think is at the heart of his insistence on dialogue. That where you have both the constraints of language as a system at work. I mean, it wouldn't work without that. Yeah, I mean, we need something in common, and insofar as it's in common, it's not yours and it's not mine. But on the other hand, we have to have something that is ours and only ours. And language, I mean, that's the magic of it. It is able to accomplish both those tasks. I'm sorry, that doesn't, is that?
That satisfies me. But would you take it a step further and say that some of the great writers, say
Yeah.
Dante, for example,
Yeah.
are actually, yes, they're sharing language, but aren't they co-creating language? Aren't they altering to a point where it's no longer the same thing ever again?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, it is the great writers, I mean, most of whom write literature, but I mean, it's also true of people like Plato, who wrote pretty well too. But great writers change language. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I take that as a given. And Dante does it, of course, more self-consciously than most. Not only in the Divine Comedy, but I mean in the great book that he wrote on language. Yeah, so that he's one of the best examples. That's probably why you chose it, Andre, for the point that you're making. Yes, surely. And Dostoevsky has had, I think, even in French translation, has had an effect on language. There was just a meeting at Sorbonne 3, and some of my French friends were making just this point, that there is in the early 20th century a kind of French hang-up on confessional language that reflects itself in the way people use pronouns, for instance. Now, whether this is true or not, I mean, I'm merely repeating the gossip that I heard last week, but it would, if it were true, be an example precisely of what you're talking about.